Welcome to a Dual Digest podcast where two friends dive deep into the topics that matter.
From technology and AI to science, history, and global trends, we break down complex ideas and make them easy to understand.
Whether you're here for insights, entertainment, or just some good conversation, we've got you covered.
Just remember, stay curious, question everything, and keep exploring the world around you. And remember, every great conversation starts with a curious mind. Let's explore together.
Make sure to follow and subscribe.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. You guys sent us some really cool stuff to dig into today, some scientific papers on Neuralink, and some excerpts from Ray Kurzweil's book, The Singularity is Near.
Yeah, those are really interesting choices, actually. We've got the immediate hands-on work Neuralink's doing with brain-machine interfaces, and then Kurzweil's way out there, taking the really long view, where AI surpasses human intelligence.
It's like we're looking at two sides of the same coin here.
Uh-huh.
We've got this incredible brain-machine interface platform that Neuralink is building, and then we got Kurzweil predicting this mind-blowing concept called the singularity.
Yeah, it's definitely enough to make you think.
For sure.
Well, let's start with Neuralink.
Okay.
They've developed this platform that can handle thousands of channels.
Thousands of channels. Okay, so for someone who's not a neuroscientist, what does that actually mean?
Imagine each channel is like a tiny little phone line, allowing communication between the brain and the outside world.
Okay.
And to do this, Neuralink uses these arrays of thin threads, each with multiple electrodes on them, that get inserted into the brain.
Oh, wow.
And these threads are incredibly thin, much thinner than a human hair.
Really?
Yeah.
So each of those tiny electrodes can pick up signals from individual neurons.
That's right.
Wow.
But I know what you're thinking. Putting anything into the brain sounds a little scary.
Yeah, a little bit.
But that's where the size of these threads is so important.
Okay.
By making them so thin, they actually minimize the disruption to the brain tissue.
Okay.
And to make sure the procedure is as precise as possible, they developed a surgical robot to do the implanting.
Oh, wow.
They actually even have a video online showing the robot inserting threads into a brain proxy. It's pretty wild to watch.
So less risky and invasive than you might think.
Right. And on top of that, they've managed to put these integrated chips right on the implant itself to handle all the signal processing.
Okay, so why is that so important?
Well, just think about it. With thousands of electrodes, you're collecting a massive amount of data from the brain.
Yeah, that's a lot of data.
So these chips take all those neural signals, they amplify them, turn them into digital information, and send them out for processing.
Oh, wow.
And they're designed to do all of this with minimal power consumption, which is really important when you're talking about a device that's going to be implanted in someone's body.
So it's like they shrunk down a whole supercomputer and put it right in your head.
That's a pretty good way to put it.
Okay, so Neuralink is really focused on what's possible right now. But Ray Kurzweil, he's looking way further into the future.
Yeah, Kurzweil is thinking big picture. He's envisioning a time, which he calls the singularity, where artificial intelligence actually surpasses human intelligence.
So he's saying that AI will actually become smarter than us. I've heard that before, but it always seemed like something out of science fiction.
It's definitely a bold prediction, but Kurzweil backs it up by looking at historical trends.
Okay.
He points to things like Moore's law, where the number of transistors on a computer chip has been doubling roughly every 2 years as evidence that technology advances at an exponential rate.
Yeah, I remember learning about Moore's law in school, but how does faster computing actually translate to AI that can, outthink humans?
Well, Kurzweil sees this exponential growth happening in other fields too, like DNA sequencing, memory storage, communication, and even just miniaturization.
Mm-hmm.
He argues that all these advancements are interconnected and they'll eventually converge and create the conditions for truly super intelligent AI.
So it's not just about raw computing power. It's about all these different technologies feeding into each other and kind of creating a snowball effect.
Precisely.
Okay.
And he actually believes that this exponential growth in technology will lead to things like radical life extension,
Wow.
and even the merging of human and artificial intelligence.
Okay, merging with AI, that does sound like science fiction. But
Right.
Kurzweil argues that this is a natural progression in our technological evolution.
Right. He sees it as the next step.
So how does he see that happening?
Well, nanotechnology plays a huge role in his vision.
Okay.
And nanotechnology, is the ability to manipulate matter at the molecular level.
Okay. And Kurzweil predicts that we'll be able to develop these tiny robots called nanobots that can actually interact with our biological systems.
Okay, so instead of computers as we know them, he's talking about molecular computers.
Exactly.
Hmm.
Potentially millions of times smaller and more powerful than anything we have today.
Okay, now my head is definitely spinning.
I can imagine.
This is all so fascinating, but it also raises so many questions
Of course.
about what it means to be human in a world where, the lines between us and machines are becoming so blurred.
It's true. And those are exactly the kinds of questions we're going to dive into next.
Okay.
The ethical and philosophical implications are just as mind-blowing as the technology itself.
I can't wait. Welcome back. So we left off talking about some pretty big ideas.
We did. It's like stepping into a whole new realm of existence, and we don't even have a map.
It's true.
Yeah.
But before we get too deep into the philosophical stuff,
Okay.
I want to circle back to Kurzweil's idea of exponential growth for a second. He talks about it constantly in the singularity is near.
He does.
So it must be pretty central to his thinking.
Okay, so why is it so important?
Well, we humans tend to think linearly, like
What?
one step at a time, right?
Yeah.
But Kurzweil is saying technological progress doesn't work like that. It's exponential, which means it's constantly accelerating.
Okay, I'm starting to see how that ties into the singularity.
Right.
Even small advances in technology today could lead to massive changes down the road.
Right? Exactly. Like, think of it like compound interest. Even small gains add up to huge growth over time.
Okay.
Kurzweil actually uses the analogy of a chessboard to illustrate this.
Oh, okay.
Imagine you put 1 grain of rice on the first square,
Okay.
2 on the second, 4 on the third, and so on, doubling it each time.
Right.
By the time you get to the last square, you've got a mountain of rice.
Wow, okay.
That's the power of exponential growth.
That's a great visual.
So Kurzweil's basically saying that technological progress is like that chessboard, right? It builds on itself faster and faster.
So how does that connect back to the singularity? Is he saying that this acceleration will eventually get so fast that it leads to this sudden, unpredictable leap forward in AI?
That's the core of his argument. He believes that this exponential growth in technology will lead to a point where progress is happening so rapidly that it fundamentally reshapes our world, and that's what he calls the singularity.
It's both fascinating and a little bit terrifying to even think about.
It's true, it's like we're standing at the edge of a precipice, not knowing what's on the other side.
Yeah.
But you mentioned earlier that nanotechnology plays a big role in Kurzweil's vision.
Right.
So can you break that down for me a little bit? What exactly does he envision nanotechnology being capable of? Imagine tiny robots, called nanobots, working inside your body, repairing damage at the cellular level.
Okay.
Kurzweil predicts that nanotechnology will eventually give us that level of precise control over matter. I mean, think about it. Nanobots could destroy pathogens, they could repair damaged tissue, even reverse the aging process.
Okay. That sounds a little far-fetched, even for me.
It's understandable to feel that way, for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we are still in the early stages of, nanotechnology.
Right.
But the potential is absolutely vast. Kurzweil really believes that nanobots will revolutionize medicine, manufacturing, even computing.
Okay, so back to those molecular computers we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Can you remind me how those would even work? It's hard to imagine a computer made out of, molecules.
I know, right? It's pretty wild. So think about the computers we use today, right?
Yep.
They rely on transistors to process information.
Mm-hmm.
A molecular computer would use individual molecules as the building blocks for computation.
Okay.
So this would allow for a dramatic increase in processing power and efficiency.
So instead of our clunky laptops and smartphones,
Right.
we could have these microscopic computers that are millions of times more powerful.
Exactly. And Kurzweil argues that this kind of exponential growth in computing power is absolutely essential to achieving the singularity.
It all comes back to that processing power, doesn't it?
It does. But it's not just about the hardware, right?
Right.
We also need the software, the algorithms
That's
that
right.
drive those machines. And Kurzweil believes we're making significant progress on that front, especially in fields like machine learning.
Oh, Machine learning.
Yes.
I hear that term everywhere these days, but I'm still not totally sure what it means.
It's basically a type of AI that allows computers to learn from data without explicit programming.
Hmm.
So instead of writing specific rules for every scenario,
Yeah.
you feed massive amounts of data into a machine learning algorithm,
Okay.
and it figures out the patterns and relationships on its own.
So the machine is teaching itself to think.
In a way, yeah. I mean, machine learning algorithms are getting really good at things like, image recognition, speech synthesis,
Hmm.
even decision making.
Okay.
But there are definitely still limitations, right? Some experts argue we're still a long way from creating what they call artificial general intelligence, or AGI,
Yeah.
which is AI that can, perform any intellectual task that a human can.
Right, that makes sense.
Yeah.
It seems like there's a pretty big gap between AI that can recognize a cat in a photo
Yeah.
and AI that can, write a symphony or solve a complex scientific problem.
It's true. But Kurzweil is optimistic. He argues that once AI reaches a certain threshold of intelligence, it'll be able to design and improve itself at an exponential rate,
Okay.
quickly exceeding human capabilities.
So that's the concept of recursive self-improvement,
Exactly.
where AI can basically bootstrap itself to higher and higher levels of intelligence.
Precisely. And Kurzweil believes that once that process begins,
Yeah.
it'll lead to what he calls an intelligence explosion, resulting in a super intelligent AI that can solve problems and make discoveries that are just way beyond our current comprehension.
So it's exhilarating and terrifying all at the same time.
I think that's a pretty good way to put it.
So what role would be left for humans in a world with this super powerful AI?
That's the big question. That's the question that leads us right to the heart of the singularity and all its implications.
Okay.
And those are exactly the things that we're going to explore further when we come back.
All right, so we're back, and I think the big question that's been kind of looming over this whole conversation is, what happens to us?
Yeah, to humanity, right.
Yeah, what happens to humanity when AI becomes smarter than us?
Right. It's the question, right.
Yeah.
The one that everyone wants to know the answer to.
Yeah.
And it's the one that sparks both, the excitement and the fear. And to be honest, there's no easy answer.
Right.
But Kurzweil, he doesn't necessarily see it as this, dystopian scenario where the machines take over.
Right.
He actually envisions a future where humans and AI merge
Okay.
and augment our own intelligence and abilities.
So instead of a battle between us and the machines,
Right.
it's more of a collaboration,
Yeah.
a fusion of our minds with technology.
Yeah. Exactly, yeah. He predicts that we'll eventually be able to connect our brains directly to the internet and these vast AI networks, giving us access to, incredible amounts of knowledge and processing power.
That sounds like something straight out of like a cyberpunk novel.
It does, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's exhilarating and a little scary all at the same time.
It is, but it also raises so many ethical and philosophical questions.
So many, yeah. What does it even mean to be human? In a world where our minds are intertwined with machines.
It's a huge question.
What happens to, our sense of self? Our
Right.
individuality?
Our identity.
Yeah, and who gets access to this technology in the first place?
That's a big one.
It seems like there are so many risks that come along with all these advancements.
Definitely.
So what are some of the things that we need to be thinking about and being really cautious of as we move toward this future?
I think one of the biggest ones is control.
Okay.
Who has access to these powerful technologies? And how are they being used? Think about brain-machine interfaces, for example.
Okay.
Imagine a scenario where someone could hack into your neural implant. They could manipulate your thoughts, your actions. It's scary stuff.
It's like a whole new frontier of vulnerability.
It is. And
I mean, we've already seen cyber attacks on, medical devices, but this is a whole other level.
absolutely. And it's not just about individual security either, right?
Right. What about the potential for social control?
Exactly. Imagine a government using brain-machine interfaces to monitor or even influence the thoughts of its citizens.
Wow.
It sounds like something out of, a dystopian sci-fi film, but it's a scenario that we need to be thinking about.
Yeah, and actively guarding against.
For sure.
Regulations are important.
Yes.
But it seems like they can only go so far.
Right. What about unintended consequences?
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about technologies that could fundamentally alter, human nature.
Right.
How can we possibly predict or control what might happen?
That's one of the biggest unknowns, and I think it's what keeps a lot of AI researchers up at night.
Yeah.
What happens if we create a super intelligent AI that doesn't share our values, our goals?
Right.
Some experts believe that we can design AI systems with safeguards, ensuring that they remain aligned with human values.
Right.
But others would argue that it's simply impossible to fully predict or control the behavior of a super intelligent entity.
It's a tough question for sure. But, I think it's also important to remember that, there's incredible potential here for good as well. We
Absolutely.
can't let the fear, paralyze us.
I agree. I mean, used wisely, these technologies could help us solve some of the world's biggest problems.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine using brain-machine interfaces to cure paralysis or treat neurological disorders,
Wow.
enhance cognitive abilities.
It's pretty amazing when you think about it.
It is. We could potentially eradicate diseases, extend the human lifespan, even merge our minds with the vast knowledge of the internet.
So it's mind-boggling to think about the possibilities, but how do we make sure that we're having these really critical conversations about ethics and responsibility before it's too late?
Yeah, it's easy to get swept up in all the excitement of the new technology.
Oh, yeah.
And forget about the potential downsides. I think we need to engage in a really broad public dialogue about the implications of these technologies.
Okay.
And this isn't just a conversation for scientists and engineers.
Right.
It's a conversation for everyone. We need to be having these discussions in our schools, our communities, our governments.
Yeah.
The future of humanity is at stake, and we all have a role to play in shaping it.
Well, I think this deep dive has given our listeners a really solid foundation for engaging in those conversations.
I hope so.
We've covered a lot of really complex and challenging ideas,
We have.
but I think, the more we understand about these advancements, the better equipped we'll be to navigate the future.
I agree. Knowledge is power, right?
It is.
And in this, rapidly evolving technological landscape, it's more important than ever.
Absolutely. This has been an incredible journey.
It has.
It's both exhilarating and daunting to imagine what the future holds. But one thing's for sure, we are living in a time of unprecedented change.
We are.
And the choices that we make today are going to have a profound impact on generations to come.
I agree completely. I think that the most important takeaway here is that the future isn't something that just happens to us.
Right.
It's something that we create together.
We do.
So let's keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep shaping the future that we want to see.
Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive into the world of technology and the human brain. It's been an absolutely fascinating and thought-provoking conversation.
It has. It has.
And to our listeners, keep those questions coming and stay curious about the incredible world that we are creating.
Make sure to follow and subscribe.